Hey everyone, and welcome to this corner of the internet. You might have seen me on TikTok or Instagram talking about fashion history or pop culture or anything in that realm. And after much thought and many of you guys asking, I decided to finally move to long form so we can discuss topics in a little bit more depth. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my 1 minute long videos. I love them, but there's also only so much you can say, and I feel like in a longer form video we get to gossip, chat, yap, whatever you like to call it, about these topics in just a little bit more of a broader sense. Anyway, we're going to have fun here. So lock in, because today we're going to be talking all about going analog, nostalgia culture, digital detoxes, digital dark ages, and all that jazz. So the big question is, why are we romanticizing the past so much, rejecting digital life, and what does that say about our future? Da da da. "2026 might go down as the year we all collectively looked at our screens and kind of just decided we've had enough." Over the last year, something interesting has been happening. Nostalgia isn't just trending, it's beginning to organise itself into its very own lifestyle. Not just an aesthetic, but an actual lifestyle. 2016 is having a cultural renaissance, not just in memes, but in the carefree, literally my life, emotional way. Triangle bikinis, Alexis Ren ab workouts, Adidas superstars, Tumblr edits set to the sounds of Fetty Wap. 1738. Instagram filters desperately trying to recreate flash photography from cheap old digital cameras that we all had when we were 13. And it's not just about fashion or music, it's our behaviour and our buying habits. Now, the world is pretty scary right now. I mean, I'm scared. Are you scared? So I guess climbing back to 2016, the last moment before things started to get weird. Maybe that last moment before we all became adults. I was 16 then, and I guess that was kind of the precipice of becoming like aware of the fears and horrors of the world. So it kind of makes sense. People are buying CDs again, hunting down old iPods, ditching iPhones and crisp photography for grainy digital camera photos. We're going to the cinema instead of opening Netflix, because the need for nostalgia right now isn't just about aesthetics, it's about escape. And I think 2026 is shaping up to the year where people do really want to escape and go analog. So why does this nostalgia feel so different from nostalgia of the past? Pop culture nostalgia isn't new. The 70s romanticised medieval style, the 90s loved the 70s, more recently Y2K came back, and honestly, it never really left. But this wave does feel different. Or maybe I'm just being egotistical and it's because I'm living through it that it feels different. I don't know, you tell me. Because this time nostalgia isn't being sold to us by corporations, it's kind of being claimed by us first. And as a side note, MTV just stopped running as a channel. I think that kind of says a lot, because MTV feels so synonymous with pre-streaming music culture, so to see it shut down feels like kind of the antithesis to people wanting to move back to that culture. So I feel like big corporations, you need to get your fingers on the pulse, because you could have had a radio station or something. Imagine MTV radio station. Maybe that already exists, I don't know, but I'd listen in. Before we dive even more in, I want to talk a little bit about the Gen Z and the in-between internet era. As a Gen Z person myself, there's this constant debate about what we actually grew up with and whether we really understand the millennial childhood and what it was like to grow up without technology. But we definitely grew up in this in-between. We had brick phones, we had no phones, we had videos, we had DVDs, Blu-ray, and then we had streaming services. I remember sitting at the home computer with my sister, with my iPod, as she downloaded A Tribe Called Quest and other old school hip-hop songs onto it for me. So I really do remember like pre-Spotify times. But I digress. Bar Generation Alpha, we're the first generation to fully grow up with technology. Or maybe not grow up, but like grow with technology. Anyone born in 2000 on that millennial has really been born and grown with technology's boom, and as we've aged, it's kind of developed with us. And because of that, I don't think we're trying to actually escape it completely. I think it's more about appreciating, understanding that it has value. I mean, many, if not most of my friends I have now and closest ones are people that I met through social media. So I think we understand how it has value for building community, but it's about reclaiming that balance. So maybe instead of going completely analog, we're actually going more old school tech digital, to be precise, because also analog is actually just like records, and like I don't even know if a landline would be counted as analog. maybe like letter writing rather than texting would be analog. Anyway, Future Rosie jumping in here to quickly define the difference between analog and digital. I'm going to read it off my computer because it's a little confusing. Analog is continuous, like a dimmer switch with infinite settings or waves, while digital is discrete, using only on-off states, zeros and ones, like a standard light switch, making digital signals precise and robust for data, but analog offers smooth representation. Think of an analog clock with hands moving smoothly versus a digital clock showing numbers that jump. So record player, landline, old radio, analog, camera, phone, digital. And from what I understand, analog is just a little bit more reliable. Like in a dangerous situation, it's good to have a analog radio for communication versus a phone. Anyway, back to the video. Point is, I think that this generation is just keen to get those boundaries and consume less, and maybe go back to what like 2014 to 2016 social media felt like. Although then it was still kind of performative, there was the fun carefreeness of it all, and you could only scroll so far before your Instagram feed came up with this thing that said like, you've reached the bottom of your timeline, there's nothing left to see, instead of like endless scrolling that we currently have. And I think that there was something nice about that. It forced you to put it away rather than hooking you in and forcing you to scroll more. Now, cultural theorist Mark Fisher argued that late-stage capitalism traps culture in loops of nostalgia, and I find this so interesting and so relevant because it becomes harder to imagine new or a positive future, which I think we're all collectively struggling with at the moment. The idea is, according to Mark Fisher, that the future has almost, in a sense, been cancelled. So instead of imagining what's coming next, we return to what felt safe, and in this case, that's 2016, I guess. So really, we just need to start putting building blocks into what a future could look like that feels genuinely positive. Now, we all see the irony of going analog. The notion of going analog becoming a viral concept is, of course, just the most ironic thing in the world, and I would be remiss not to mention it. The analog bag going viral on TikTok, leading to heavy consumption of journals, for example. So we aren't rejecting the internet entirely, we're redefining its role. Media theorist Marshall McLuhan said, "We shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us." So right now, people are reshaping their tools, not deleting social media, but recentering it. Now, it also has to be said, by reshaping our tools, that doesn't mean overconsumption. And I think that's something that's getting lost. Going analog doesn't mean you need to go out and buy a new DVD player on Amazon, a CD player on Amazon, all of this new tech. There's so much of it on eBay already, and I think part of the beauty of this quote-unquote trend is the connection it has to physical life, going to your local library to get CDs and DVDs, trading with your friends. It's about getting out into the world and building those connections. We can't get so consumery about the whole thing because then it gets ruined. So if you're looking to go analog, then make sure you're switching in the right kind of way and for the right reasons. Anyway, let's get back into it. Videos are starting to mimic old tech, framed as if they were found in an archive, when in fact they're actually just filmed on an iPhone camera yesterday afternoon. The irony of trying to escape tech while broadcasting that escape doesn't escape me. The commodification of being offline as an online aesthetic is bizarre, but also a way to build communities, if those communities extend to real life. Being offline has become a status symbol, and it has to be said, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other video. An extension of the shift toward physical media is connection to community and our very obvious need for real life human connection. I think we're all desperate for a hug, and one of the most fascinating moments of this shift have nothing to do with tech itself, but with how we're using it. In-person lookalike contests, pop-up gathering organised online just to exist offline, and maybe the clearest example of all, the viral 5-minute cigarette break, which I think saw like 1,000 people showing up. It sounds ridiculous, but there's something actually very human about it, like this desperate need to connect, even just for 5 minutes, sharing something as banal as smoking a cigarette. Sociologist Emil Durkheim described this as a collective effervescence. I love that word so much. Moments where people feel emotionally unified simply by sharing a physical space. And I feel like we've really lost that. We've got so few third spaces that I think it's hard to find. Social media stimulates it, but doesn't fully replicate it. I think a lot of us are becoming touch-starved for these moments after years of existing virtually, especially during COVID, which forced us to be so chronically online. The internet, which once felt like an escape, has now become the thing we're trying to escape from, or the tool we use to create moments to escape it. And although I say touch-starved, like, a metaphor. I think we all are actually physically touch starved as well, from just like scrolling and building these relationships virtually instead of having that physical contact with people. Now, another reason, and for me one of the biggest reasons why analog appeals to me and physical media, something I really love, is ownership. Tech archivists warn about coming digital dark age, a future where massive amounts of culture and history are lost because digital formats degrade, disappear, or become inaccessible. And I think we've already seen that with the loss of MySpace and Tumblr. I can't imagine how much personal history was documented on MySpace that we now just can't see. A moment for me that made me realise how personal the digital dark age actually is, and how much we all actually need to be taking it seriously and archiving our personal histories for our future families and future humans, if we really want to, was, and this is going to sound so silly, but I was trying to log into my old Snapchat account and I was documenting my life on Snapchat, like from 13 to 18, pretty consciously, because I was aware back then. I've always loved like saving things and archiving things, so back then I was like, this is going to be like a time capsule for me. I'm going to be able to look back and see these videos. So I'd even sometimes put my camera up and talk to my future self through it. I took it very seriously. Last year I tried to log into my Snapchat account, but because I've changed my phone number since then, I can't access it anymore. And just like that, all of those memories, videos, and that time capsule I'd spent time building disappeared. And I was actually really sad about it. I was pretty heartbroken, to be honest, which sounds silly, but I put so much time into building it when I was younger, so it felt like a big loss to lose that huge part of my personal history. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 years pretty much. But then I remembered in my mum's garage I have a few photo albums, because I was always that girl with a disposable camera, so I do have a lot of photo albums, but that to me was such a big reminder of how important physical media actually is, because the reality is, if your phone breaks, if you get hacked, if you forget to pay your subscription, you just lose everything. And that goes across everything. We create accounts, sometimes even pay for them monthly, but because they aren't physical, we don't really have control or ownership of them. Even if we think that we do, unless it's in our own hands, I don't think we actually own it and have any power or autonomy over it. So we don't really own our digital lives. Miss a subscription payment, lose access to an account, a platform removes a title, years of music, photos, memories are just gone. And that fear actually led me to make my partner, who's a huge physical media enthusiast, a printed magazine of all of our holidays for Christmas. So I think beautiful things can come of it, and that's the whole point of going analog, is there's this shift to wanting to have physical media and like a physical access to ourself and our memories and our community. Why owning stuff actually does matter. I think this is another big driver toward analog tech, the ability to collect, to build relationships with our ephemera. I think stuff existing online stops you being able to build those emotional relationships. If someone passes away, you don't want to scroll through their Instagram account, you want to look through photos of them, to hold things and not just let them float in the cloud. For example, over Christmas I spent hours looking through old photo albums with a cup of tea, and it was such a gorgeous experience. But I'd never do that. I'd never have a cup of tea and scroll through my iPhone photos. That would be such a different experience, because the value of the photo album isn't just in the photos, but it's the time capsule of when I made them, the choice to use which photo album. Every little detail was very important to me at that time, so connecting with it physically now brings me back to that moment, and I'm not just looking at a screen but through physical touch. Another aspect of ownership more broadly, most of us owning a house is pretty much completely unobtainable, so there's something comforting about owning other things. Like, I can't have a house, but I can have a DVD player and every single Barbie movie ever made on DVD. And I know that sounds extremely consumerist, and it is, but I think there's also comfort in having stuff when you haven't really got a place. And maybe that sounds a bit dramatic, so let me know if you disagree. But we're the first generation where it feels like it's almost impossible to get a stable job. Owning property feels pretty much unrealistic, and the future looks really, really weird. So I think that having these physical archives that we're building out around us feels like a way of reclaiming our present and reclaiming our future. And there's safety in it. It's like building a safety net in an uncertain time and leaning on the physical. So there's safety in it, the safety and nostalgia, and the safety in having things to hold on to in uncertain times and times of crisis. Kind of like nesting. leaving something tangible behind for future generations. CDs, DVDs, and photo albums might not be convenient, but they are secure. And I think right now everybody is desperately looking for security. So moving to analog can actually be considered as a form of defense and not a form of regression. Walter Benjamin, a man who I cannot escape, talked about aura, the emotional weight of objects that exist physically in time and space. Digital culture strips that aura away. Analog brings it back. It's reclaiming the ability to build relationships with people, things, and ourselves. Old tech and analog forces you to slow down and like be intentional with the act. And I think that's such a big part of it, is sitting down and writing in my journal at home. I can't carry this around, it's too heavy, versus being on the tube and writing on my notes page is a radically different experience. All I can do is do that one task. It's not, I can't find the word now, which is really annoying. I can't be productive whilst I'm doing this. I sit and I do it. Whereas on the tube, I'm traveling somewhere, I'm between doing something and I'm slotting it in. It feels like a productivity thing. And I think that's one of the things that I personally love about physical media, is it stops that need to be productive. You sit there and it feels like a moment where you're actually sitting with the music, sitting with the magazine, similar to going through a gallery or something like that. But yeah, I feel like uncertain times and analog and physical media make sense together. We're trying to keep ourselves safe. So no, I don't think 2026 is about going backwards and analog is a bad thing. It's about slowing down, presence over performance. The age of analog isn't a rejection of technology, it's learning how to balance ourselves with it more sustainably. So I want to know, what analog swaps are you most tempted by? And if you're completely offline, I want to know what that's like for you, and could you see yourself in 2026 going completely offline? Thanks so much for listening wherever you are in the world. I can't wait to delve into more topics with you guys. We've got so much to discuss. It's going to be a very exciting year. So don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more videos.